good afternoon. We're here at Sant'Orsola, the Future Museum. I'm Linda Falcone, and this is Restoration Conversations. We're here at Sant'Orsola with Morgane Laforgue, the curator and director of the museum. And we're so happy, on behalf of Calliope Arts, to welcome you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. I'm really happy to lead people to discover this new place in the center of Florence, this new cultural place, and the exhibition that is on show until the 27th of October.
Yes, so we're in time.
Yes, you're still in time to discover the exhibition.
Wonderful.
Revelations.
We're here at the foundations of the building.
Exactly.
And I wanted to ask if we could start looking actually at the foundations and if you could tell us a little bit about what we're seeing, because I think our guests will be very excited about who is buried here.
So we are here in the former convent of Sant'Orsola, in the most historical place of the convent, so the church. It has some foundation. It has been founded in the beginning of the 14th century. It used to be a convent for Benedictine nuns, and then it became a convent for Franciscan nuns. And in the 1542, a really famous woman was buried here in the crypt of the church, and that is Lisa Gherardini. Lisa Gherardini was the alleged Mona Lisa of Leonardo's most famous painting. And
so the Mona Lisa is buried here, right?
Yes.
And I just want to stop you there because we are actually talking about one of the most famous women in the world, obviously depicted by Leonardo da Vinci, but she is not actually as well known as one might think. According to Vasari, she was Lisa Gherardini. Mona Lisa is actually Madonna Lisa, so it's My Lady, right? My Lady.
Exactly. Madonna Lisa.
Exactly. And she had 5 children, and one of her daughters was here at the convent.
Marietta became Suor Ludovica. Yes, and her husband, Francesco del Giocondo, that's why you have the name of Gioconda. Mm-hmm. When he died, at the end of the 30s of the 16th century, he wrote in his testament that he wanted that his beloved wife would join their daughter, Marietta, and live her life in the peaceful convent of Sant'Orsola, because they lived not far away. And so she lived her last years here in Sant'Orsola, and she was buried here.
So is it the second or the first? The first, the one farthest away.
Yes. Thanks to the works of Giuseppe Palenti. He's an archivist who is fascinated by the story of Lisa Gherardini, and he found in the archives that Lisa Gherardini was buried in the basement of Sant'Orsola's church. So we are sure that she was an inhabitant of Sant'Orsola convent. What we will never be sure is that Lisa Gherardini is Mona Lisa. Well, there is always a bit of a mystery. But
but Vasari did say, right, in his Life of Artists, can we get the camera down here just so, because the guests want to know if we can actually see what we can actually see, but we can't. We can't see.
You can see a burial space.
Yes,
you can't see the bones
exactly.
or the...
Well, luckily, right?
Yes.
Luckily. So this idea that she was possibly Mona Lisa, we're not quite certain 100%, but it was written in Vasari's Life of Artists, right, that Leonardo had depicted her. So there's that possibility.
Yes.
You sound that you're not convinced.
I mean, Vasari is not always right. No.
He thinks he is.
He thinks he is, and he's really important. He's one of the most important art historian of art history. But, well, if you talk to a lot of curators or archivists, they will always say, Vasari is important, but you need to be careful too, and cross the information with other information that are...
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is an interesting point to start because we're at the museum just so our guests can understand some of the context. The Sant'Orsola Museum is not yet open. What we're seeing is an exhibition in a work site.
Exactly, in the museum in the making.
Museum in the making. So this, in fact, I was speaking with Morgane the other day, and we really wanted to do the restoration conversations here and now, because as of October 27th, after this show closes, they're going to begin work, right?
Yes,
And begin
important
construction.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what we see
For 3
now,
years.
exactly, what we see now won't be what we will see in the future. But tell me what we're seeing here. This is part of an installation. Do you want
Yes.
to talk to me a little bit about the artist?
Yes, of course, with pleasure. This is an installation entitled Breath, Souffle, Sophia. It was created by the French artist Juliette Minchin. She's an artist based in Paris, and her material of predilection is wax. So all you can see here is made out of wax. She came here for 1 month and a half, and she created these veils or drapes made out of wax, and that are now evolving on the windows of the space and emerging in a way from this excavation site.
So you're talking about essentially the whole space is an
Yes,
installation in which
exactly.
she worked to create this space.
Yeah.
If we can get the camera close, because originally, Morgane, when I'm touching it, can I touch it?
Yes, you can, but actually people can touch the spare parts that are on the bench. So
Okay,
that you
I'll
can
wait. I'll try
the-
and be good. I thought originally when you first sent me the photos, I thought that these installations were actually cloth. And so when I came to do our site visit and saw that they are wax and
So solid.
so solid, and the skill of this robe work that she does. You know, oftentimes when you see painters, a lot of times the skill of the robe work, and women were particularly skillful, and women painters throughout the centuries were skillful in robe work. So what is Juliette doing? She's responding to the space, but what did that
Yes.
mean in her mind?
Yes, she's responding to the space because the general idea of inviting contemporary artists is to enter and create a dialogue with the architecture and with the ancient identity functionalities of the space where the artists are creating their artworks. And so the starting point from her installation that you see here in the ancient church, that is important that it is here in the church, not only to enhance, in a way, this excavation site that has been rediscovered, but to really talk to people about something that, unfortunately, they cannot see anymore. There are no longer traces. And so I'm talking about the past of this church when it has been completely redecorated in the 16th century, put it to the Baroque style.
Yeah.
You know, we know that the church of Sant'Orsola was completely redecorated, and it had 3 altarpieces and 3 marble architectural construction that were made. Also, a lot of important restyling. When at the end of the 17th century, Napoleon arrived. And then when it became a tobacco manufactory at the beginning of the 19th century, it has been completely removed, all these traces. So
I'm just going to give our guests a little bit of contact from that point of view, and then we're going to see the key piece of Juliette's installation. Just a little bit of context. You're talking about the different periods within the church's life.
Yes.
Okay, and Juliette is responding to the Baroque period, so very billowy and very
theatrical
ornate.
and ephemeral, and with the idea of the illusion of materials. We know that in this period in Italy, in sculptures, for instance, they took great pleasure into creating fake illusion of a material, for instance, fabrics made out of stone or marble and really solid other material. So that would show the people who are looking at it the ability, their maestria.
Absolutely.
So that's the idea also of Juliette, is to give a tribute to this trompe-l'œil and ingano. I don't know how you say it.
The deceit of the craftsmanship.
But the deceit that is actually then a marvel, no? That you say, oh, that is not veil with a puff of wind moving it. It is wax. Or it is another.
Come here. Come next to me. Because I actually want the camera to get our perspective. So if Francesco and Giacomo, you can come on this side, and because I really want them to see from here.
Yes.
Right?
Of course.
This central, very poetic and very spiritual view of an altarpiece that is no more.
Exactly. Of an altar. And its altarpiece in the middle. You see this rectangle form that is to evoke this lost pala d'altare altarpiece. And also, for instance, you see this oval form. It is a reference, and other form that you can see on the windows. It is a reference to this grate that had been created in the 17th century, and that divided the choir. So religious women, nuns, they were behind grates, and they couldn't be seen by people in the choir when they did the office. So grates and architecture at the time worked as a metaphorical veil, because also what you can see in these windows, actually it is an unveilment. No, we are rediscovering a part of the history of the place, but also discovering a work of an artist with a beautiful artistic approach.
Absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of veils, right, here we have this, she's sort of the quintessential nun, right? Yes. The quintessential spiritual figure, and here you have the drapery that you were discussing before, but she is, in this period at least, I mean from the 1300s until the 1700s at least, she is every woman, right? Exactly. On some level.
And every here, the fact that you have this materialization of presence, but a presence that is also absent, because you have no body and no face. You have just a veil, so just a clothes. That will be the function of these religious women, but the religious women with no, identity, individuality, no thing that could distinguish them from another.
Yes.
So she embodies all of these women, but not only religious women, as you said, also women that were just a mother or just a function and not a real personality.
Right.
Okay.
It's what you're saying is absolutely significant, because particularly, I mean, you have to remember that 50% of educated women from the 1500s onwards were in convents, right?
Yes.
I've read statistics. They say 1 in 16 women. So obviously, there are also the poor women to take into consideration, women who well, it was cheaper to go into the convent than it was to find a dowry.
Exactly, yes. And it was a good situation anyway. If a woman was not maybe pretty enough to be married, well, then
she wasn't
she
pretty
would
enough.
Yes, most I know it's I read a lot of history about female condition in convent, and yes, lots of women finished in convent because they were the second or the third daughters, and it was too expensive to find a husband and pay for the parents the
dowry. Okay, so if we can get the camera, sorry to be micromanaging, but I like you to get specifically this perspective, because I think a lot of our guests, a lot of our viewers will recognize this. This is an image that is part of our collective consciousness, really worldwide. And so we have here our Mona Lisa, right?
Exactly.
Without a face.
So it is Mona Lisa, and it is not at all Mona Lisa at the same time. Yes, because in a way, it is an homage maybe more to Lisa Gherardini, who actually, to the fact that, well, we know this face and through this painting, but we don't know the woman as we didn't know the women, the religious women, their individuality. So also her is only, even if she's a really famous face here in Sant'Orsola, she is missing. She used to be there, but we don't know her. Right. We don't know the religious women. So she's also religiosa ignota, the unknown religious
she's also the
woman.
unknown religious. Yeah, in fact, it was interesting because I was thinking about our conversation and thinking, wow, the Mona Lisa is the most famous, woman in history, etc., or certainly in art history. But how little we know. How little we know about her life, I've never actually asked that question, to be honest, of who she is and what she did. And so I do want to, as we continue through our tour, I do want to talk a little bit about what life would look like for these women. And I know I see some parts here of the wax that we can touch. So yes. I just want to get the feel for a minute.
Yes, of course.
And why wax? Why was Juliette?
Juliette is fascinated with the fact that material can pass from a state to another and can continuously transform and evolve. So her artworks in general, not only here in Sant'Orsola, they are part of a cyclic process, because when she uses wax, then this installation, as you see it, is ephemeral, and then all of the wax will be reused and transformed into other art pieces that carry the past and the history of the first art pieces. And she talks about also, you can see actually here, it is a work that is, even if it's, we saw that wax is solid.
Where are we looking?
Here, sorry, we're looking at these windows, this window. This window is still evolving. It's transforming itself, because the works of Juliette Minchin talks about transformation, rebirth, destruction, but then recreation and rebirth. So really, her works talk about this transition, this rebirth in Sant'Orsola.
So Morgane, now we're going to see another space where we have more of Juliette's installation.
Exactly.
Morgane, so we are now walking in the ancient cloister, but something different about this cloister, right, is the concrete that we see. There are many different lives.
Yes,
right?
Because this place used to be a convent. So you can see the column dates back from the beginning of the 14th century. But then, after being a convent, it became a tobacco manufactory. It became a refugee shelter for Italian families that came back, that were forced to leave Istria after the Second World War. And then it was supposed to become barracks. So in the 80s.
In the 1980s.
In the 1980s, exactly. There have been an important and radical transformation of the architectural complex. And in order to make it transform it into barracks, but the works have never been finished, so it was then abandoned for 40 years. But what you can see here is dates back from this moment when they put concrete all over the walls, the inside and the outside walls.
To maintain the structure.
Yeah, and this architectural metallic element, because it's also the moment when they, elevated the convent. So they created the third and the fourth floor that wasn't there.
Okay, are we going to go up after?
We're going to go up in a part of it, yes.
Okay, well, I have a couple of questions about that, namely how we go from convent to tobacco manufacturing, and what period are we talking about? Because I know with the Napoleonic reforms, well, first with the Leopoldian reforms, but then with the Napoleonic reforms and the transferal of artworks to the Academy of the Fine Arts, etc., he was very interested in moving artistic works so that they would then become property of the state and property, civic property rather than religious property.
Yes, an imperial property then.
Right.
And fortunately for Sant'Orsola, he didn't think anything was important enough to go to France, so it stayed in Tuscany.
But do you know
Most of
where
it.
it is?
Yeah, most of it we know thanks to art historian or architects who studied the building and found artworks. And so the idea of the museum is to make come back some of the artworks, do restoration of what has been rediscovered and that is in the urgent need of restoration.
So this is very exciting. Okay, so on the one hand, you're restoring pieces that once belonged to this complex that will be part of the museum's mission when it opens.
Yes.
And on the other hand, you are commissioning site-specific works that are related in some way to this structure's history.
Exactly.
And here we have an example. I want to get us directly to the artwork because this is actually, it's not only the fact that Juliette's works are shown here is not just for this span of time, but you're actually trying to create an ongoing process in which artists continuously come to the museum and create an art collection.
Yeah, and help us rediscover, reveal through contemporary art element of the past that we don't no longer have traces. Okay, so we help contemporary artists to we give the terrain to create new artworks that will also talk about our contemporary period, of course, but that are linked to some element of the past. So we are here in the old pharmacy of Sant'Orsola Convent, the old spezieria, and the artworks that you can see, the installation made by the same artist, Juliette Minchin, always made out of wax.
Yeah.
It's is entitled Vigil with Roots, La Veillée aux Racines, and it is a tribute to the old practice of the nuns inside this pharmacy, because we know that they created pharmaceutical products, bandages, and different kind of medicine in order to to cure people. So and wax, what is also interesting is that wax was actually used to create bandage. So in a way, the artist is also protecting and taking care of this space that has been so many times altered, as you can see with the concrete, and you have traces of an old fire that also led to some damages.
Well, I'm just noticing that this is real fire.
Yes.
And so that the work is constantly changing.
The
and
work is
modifying.
really different from when we opened the exhibition at the beginning of the summer. And so it is a work that is continuing to create itself after the action of the artist. That is also the beauty of it. So every day we lit different parts of these panels, because the panels are made of steel mesh and with wicks that are embroidered in it.
Ah.
And it has been covered with wax, so that it creates like this idea of a big candle, of a work that continues to also to create, to sculpt itself, or it creates some drawings with the the passing of the flame.
Morgane, all the Americans in the room are wondering how you can have fire.
Fire here,
Yeah.
because it's all open space for the
all
moment,
open
and it is
space.
not transformed yet. So we are almost outside, inside. And we.
Yeah, it's you're half inside and half outside. In
Yes.
fact, before we were
But actually, it is almost like in the church when you used to have, the, how do you say, the big candle itself. Because it is.
There's a certain name for those candles, but I can't think of what they're called. Yeah, I think it's. You were saying something before that I think was really interesting, and how Juliette is trying to create this second life, third life,
Yes.
fourth life for her works.
For instance, also, yes, for instance, what you can see here, this stalactite, it's an evocation of the roots of the plants that were used and hung and dried here in order to create remedies. So here are these plants that will be drying here, and that sometimes we know during the preparation of the corpse that was to be buried, they had to lit these plants in order to create good perfume also, and to help with the passing of the body through the afterlife. So that's the idea also of this vigil. It's called the vigil with the roots, because you also have this kind of panel that seem to mourn or cry these spirits of these nuns that were buried in the first space where we have been.
This is the apothecary room. This is where they actually mixed. Is there a wall decoration that we need to? I wanted to show really quick this wall decoration. We're going backwards, but this is something really significant for our guests to see.
A more recent trace that seems actually to be emerging from the wall, like a testimony or a ghost of something that was trapped inside these walls and that now is going out and then going back inside. And that's the work of street artist Alberto Rucci, who was called to Sant'Orsola by the museum last year, and who took part of the first exhibition of the museum beyond the walls of Sant'Orsola. He created these big hands that are remaking the gesta.
The gestures.
The gestures of these nuns that used to work here in this place. So the evocation of the last identity of functionality of this spezieria.
Of this, well, it's the apothecary, no, we would call it, I think, in English.
Yes, apotheca.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So Alberto, what was his last name, just so that they can...
Alberto Rucci.
Rucci is doing, and he's a street artist.
Yes.
Okay.
And he was called to take part of a project that was actually entitled Ephemeral Museum Project, because his works were supposed to be ephemeral, and they are ephemeral because here in this space where he did his drawings, his paintings on the wall, it's going to be transformed next year. They will start it will be repainted maybe on top of it. It will become a restaurant.
That's going to become a restaurant, this space here.
Maybe something will be preserved, we hope so, and if not, it will be for the archaeologists of the future. One day in 200 years,
Absolutely.
They will rediscover what happened here, and
exactly.
We documented it, of course.
We did, I know, and that's absolutely incredible. And I think, although it's almost shocking that it's going to be a restaurant, but also other things. There's going to be a cultural center and a museum part of it, etc. So you're going to tell us when we're upstairs. You'll tell us the whole plan.
Of course.
Yes. But I know we have another artist to see, so I just want to look at this really quickly. Yes. This, to me, explains very well what you were saying in the other room. This idea of she recycles the wax, the works that Juliette does. She basically melts them down when the exhibition is over and creates her next work. So there's always a piece of an old work inside of a new work.
Exactly.
Correct?
That's what she did actually with the panels and this chandelier.
Yeah.
She immersed first the steel panels in a wax that is gray. It is a gray wax, as you can see here, that has melted from another installation. So it's like the old soul of the artworks. And then she immersed it into this new wax that she used because she needed more wax too. And this tinted like pink color wax. Yeah. And that's the new soul that she's putting into this new piece.
There's a lot of reincarnation elements, right? And it's interesting because she's talking about the reincarnation of the soul, and we're looking now at the reincarnation of the actual architectural space. One thing that we didn't talk about before is we were looking at the grills, right? You had mentioned the grills, but those are actually the ones in the other room are created by Juliette herself, right?
Yeah, she always creates the structure, the architectural structure. She has a structural and almost architectural approach of a project that it needs to be really working with the environment and enhancing it. So here in the Spezzeria, she goes around the pillars that are typical from the old space that dates back from the 16th century. So it's a work with steel and wax. And what we forgot that here is really important in these artworks is the smell, the scent, the perfume of these candles that are melting and that are evoking also in a way all these rituals and spiritual ceremonies that were practiced here in the Spezzeria, but mostly also in the church.
Absolutely.
So it has to be, an involving experience for the visitors to discover, not only for the eyes, but also for other senses.
New sort of idea of action art, right? I mean, she leaves the work, and there's a huge element of detachment there, right? You create a work, and then you allow it to transform as the light changes and the fire does its job.
She has no idea of how it is going to evolve. If one part with the wind is going to, burn quickly or not. So that is also the beauty of it. They're not having, a complete grasp on what you're creating.
Morgane, let's see the next artist, right? Totally different work. We'll go out this way. So here we are. We're going into a completely different part. And this is called the inner church.
Yes.
Right? And we are looking at an artist. She is an Italian artist, Marta Roberti.
Marta Roberti, yes.
Who came here as well to...
No, she came here, of course, to imagine her artistic proposition, sorry. But she worked in her studio in Rome because, as you will discover, she has a beautiful technique that is really precise, and she can't work site specific here inside this church. So
Morgane, we're seeing. I'm looking here. This is one of the only original elements, right, of the church with this fresco.
Exactly, and it has been restored by the superintendency a few years ago. And it's actually, one of the last tangible trace of art inside Sant'Orsola. So,
and do we know the period?
Yeah, it dates back from the 16th century, because we know that this church was created in the 16th century, around 1530.
Okay.
So it can't be, it's a bit, old school for this period. But it might be, the entourage of Ridolfo del Ghirlandaio, because
you think
there is an altarpiece of Sant'Orsola in San Marco that is from Ridolfo del Ghirlandaio, and some of the angels are similar. I don't think it is here. I think it is someone not really, really good who's
So a lesser artist, right? We're going to go up close and look at it now that you've said this, the poor man, right?
No.
Could it have been a woman?
No, unfortunately, I don't think so.
No. Okay, so you mentioned...
We dream of that, but I don't think there were artistic women here. That's why today we invite mostly artists that are women.
Okay, but is Marta Roberti, is she responding to this fresco? How does her series of drawings that we see throughout this space, is it responding to this?
Yes, it is. Because as you can see in this space, you can see all of these stains on the walls, You can see all these traces that could be traces of a passage of other frescoes, elements that were painting directly on the wall. So the idea of what you can see, all these drawings that are presented in this way, because it's really studied by the artist, the way all of the elements are placed in this wall is that they will present themselves as if they were, rediscovered, fragmented at fresco too, but that are on this paper, because it's her technique. She works on this kind of beautiful paper, and it's a fragile element that also conveys this idea of something that is not going to stay like that, or that maybe had been here only for a moment. So it also works for this rediscovered patrimony through contemporary art. Even if you have a lot of imagination when you're going to see it, that is also the point, because it's not perfect truth that is presented by the artist.
I just want to look up close. She has a lot of bird imagery. What do you know what she is discussing with the bird imagery? I mean, is it?
Yeah, all of this representation that you see, it is linked to the story of saints that you could read inside the convent. And so you have but it's her version of the story of the saints. So
let's look at some of these women that you're talking about, some of these goddesses and their relationship with animals.
Yeah, maybe before looking at it really closely, I should explain to you what is the main idea of this space. So, of her intervention in this inner church, the church that was exclusively reserved to the religious women, differently from the first church that was also open to other
to the public.
The public, yes. So Marta Roberti, when she arrived here, she also was really fascinated by what were the spaces of the intimacy of the nuns,
Right.
What were their cells, where did they dream, and where did they sleep. So we have, unfortunately, no traces of these monastic cells here in Sant'Orsola. But Marta, in a way, she imagined that the sisters of Sant'Orsola would have called her in order to decorate their cells, as you have in San Marco, which is not far away, the convent of San Marco, and you have Fra Angelico, who was a monk there, who painted each cell of the monk.
Yeah.
And she had this idea that maybe we could transform briefly this inner church, so reserved to the sister, into a new contemplative and personal, intimate space, a place where they could dream. And so that is what she's proposing here. It is like a dream of a religious woman, invented by the artist, of course. But what you can see, so all these animals and these women who are engaging kind of a choreography. She's imagining a world where harmony between beings is, of course, really important, and also where patriarchy is no longer in power. Well, we are in a convent, and so in convents, women were not freely around in union with nature. We're in a convent in a city, so they were between the walls. So to dream of wilderness is also, just to dream about liberty, maybe. And what we see with this body that are naked, but not in a provocative way, they are just...
It's a beautiful point, Morgane, I think, and very well connected to the Franciscan tradition, which is very closely related to people's love for animals and discussion with animals. But what are her techniques? Just as we leave and we go into another, because we're going to go into another space where we see more works. But here, these are very sort of ethereal works. What is she using? She's using a certain type of Japanese paper and
yes, actually
Chinese paper. And how is she creating the image?
She actually developed her own particular technique, which is amazingly beautiful. Yes. So she has two things that are important. The support, so the paper. As you can see, the paper, she never wants, a drawing to be created inside a frame that is already given by the, the dimension of a sheet of paper. So while she's inventing the composition, she can make it grow, as you see. So she assembled her piece. Sometimes she creates little drawings that are then glued on top of it. And the idea that so she can create an ever-growing composition in this place, for instance. So the support is really important, almost as much as the drawing that we see on top of it. And the drawing that she does it in a really particular way. Maybe we can go to the crocodile and see it, because it is a really beautiful technique that she invented. So she used 3 types of paper. She used the final paper, where you will see the image. And then she used carbon paper that she covered with the oil pastel, so for the color that she wants, for instance, this green. And then she uses another sheet of paper and a pencil, and she drew in the third one. So what we see is an impression, and she never really perfectly see what she's doing, because she's constantly looking and doing some little, if you go really close, you see that it's all a little stripe. Trattini.
Yeah, it's dashes.
Yes, that also give this effect of maybe it is a bit fading, like in a fresco too. So also this technique was perfectly welcomed here in this space to create this illusion also of a rediscovered part of used to be decorated space.
We're in the basement.
Yes, we are in the basement of the old infirmary of the convent, and it is a space that is only open this time and will never be reopened to the public or to artistic purpose. So we must see.
So this is it, right? This is it.
Yes. And we are here also in a space that the same artist, Marta Roberti, transformed. Here we can see a series of drawings made on carbon paper.
Okay.
Carbon paper was used.
The black.
Yes, it was used to replicate a drawing. You transfer it with a pencil in another paper, usually. So what we can see is artworks, drawings that are made directly on carbon paper, so not used with carbon paper to replicate, but really she used the property of this carbon paper. So when she draws here, the white that you can see, it's because she took away part of this carbon that would have been on the other paper when you replicate. You understand?
I see.
Better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
But there is also a constant in her way of working, is you can see that she carbon paper at this dimension, but she still continues to create the drawing of the dimension she wants. So she adds a lot of this paper, and then it creates this kind of mosaic and destructed or reconstructed artworks.
Are there works in that direction?
Yes, there are.
Okay, so Morgane, just to ask, because this is very original that you're taking us into the basement. And did you have this idea at midnight? It suddenly occurred to you that you could put artworks in the basement of Sant'Orsola, or how did this happen?
We actually had it together with Marta.
Okay.
Because when I discovered her work, I actually knew this technique before knowing the drawing. These are artworks that are revealed only with a backlight, so they have, in a way, their proper light. So the idea of course, with Marta, I wanted to present some of this work that she no longer does, because actually these art pieces she didn't make especially for Sant'Orsola, but it's the first time that all together they are presented this way. And anyway, she assembled in a specific way. So some of them are in a way original, because you'll see the last one, it has the perfect dimension of the other space.
I'm hurrying you because I want to go upstairs. You promised that we could go upstairs.
But you need to do
we need to do the last one? Okay.
And then we go upstairs.
Yeah.
Yes, because this is the dialogue between the first technique of Marta Roberti, which is animated drawings, because at the beginning she used carbon paper to replicate and to do these animated drawings. So now this artwork is retroilluminated by her drawing, and it gives a sense of movement of these artworks, these big birds that are flying in the basement of Sant'Orsola ancient convent.
How did she animate them? I mean, are they
with
different?
Retroproiezione. So it's retro. The light of this artwork is the light of the retroproiezione.
The projection from the back.
Yes, like a movie, And
It's fascinating.
Yes, a beautiful way to say that she can bring liberty even in some, concealed space that wouldn't seem to be that beautiful and that are hidden. So here they are in the basement. That is nature, and nature taking.
It's very moving. It's very moving when you talk about the freedom of the soul too. It's amazing.
Yes, we're on the third floor of the complex of Sant'Orsola, and here you can actually see that it was not only a convent, but it had many lives. So it became a tobacco manufactory, and then almost transformed into barracks. So you have here all of these layers of the building that has been transformed and altered over the years.
So this would have been a part that the nuns wouldn't have used.
No, the only part that they would have used in this one, when you see this little column, because it was the only part that was really on top of the convent, the loggia, where they used to
hang clothes. They used to hang clothes here.
Yes, they hang clothes, and they saw the cloister. Okay, so here we presented parts of the first installation of Alberto Rucci, of the first exhibition, the exhibition of last year. And you have to imagine that these sheets of linen fabric painted with the spray paint, because he's the same technique as what we saw on the walls in the Spezzeria. It was on top of the excavation site on the first exhibition, and represented temporarily here in this space before it will be transformed. And this will be acquired by the museum to be part of the permanent collection. So we still have something permanent of him anyway, even if we couldn't present it all the time. But
exactly, because you had said part of his work is going to be covered up.
With all of the artistic intervention, we commission, so museum commission, or not only the museum, the no-profit foundation, the Fondation Arte Astoria, that is created by this French group who is doing the redevelopment of Sant'Orsola. The idea is to create a real contemporary art collection, and so that we commission artworks, but most of them are ephemeral, as you see, but we acquire at least part of it. So it's a testimony of what they did, and it's also something that will still be permanent in the collection and that can be presented to the public at other occasions.
I think that's a very good summary of the work that you are trying to do and that you're succeeding in doing. Just one word about this particular artwork,
yes,
and you can
course.
see it from this perspective, because you had told me at one point that it's a mother and daughter.
Yes, so as I said, it was hung on top of this excavation, and you remember who was buried there?
Yes.
Lisa Gherardini and her daughter took care of her before she died.
Yes.
And what we see is the image of a mother and a daughter. So they are painted on 3 sheets of almost transparent linen effect fabric. And on one of them you have the daughter, on the other the mother, and on the third all of them. And the image is composing itself, or recomposing and decomposing. So you have an evanescent image that is a characteristic of Alberto Rucci's work in general. But here it's also the first time that he does something on canvas, that he paints elements that is not on a wall and that you can move, and that is actually moving. And the idea is that the old woman, she's almost already gone. So it is a representation of a universal love and caring of a daughter with her mother. And what is beautiful and that is actual and contemporary about this work too is that the models are actually real women that live in this district. So they are women of Sant'Orsola area of today that embodies women of Sant'Orsola of yesterday, so the past. And they are really a daughter and her mother, and they worked at the Mercato Centrale that you can actually see from here.
So let me. It's a beautiful testimony, really, on so many levels. I wanted just to take a peek outside because it's irresistible, and to have you tell me, because I think it's interesting for our guests too to get a real sense of how vast the structure is. We've given you bits and pieces today, but it really is huge, and the reconstruction project will be huge. So if you just want to, and to finish, because we're at the end of our hour, Morgane, but if you could just give us a tiny taste of what the project actually will be.
Exactly, yes. So it is a complex that is spread over almost 17,000 meters square. So the former convent and all of these extensions and transformation, up and it's the French group Artea who won the project for the renovation and restructuration of this complex of Sant'Orsola. The complex is owned by the Metropolitan City of Florence, so will still be a public building with a private concession to this group, the group that is also creating this non-profit foundation to support contemporary art and to run in autonomy the Museo Sant'Orsola. So inside the complex of Sant'Orsola, there will be a museum that will open in 2026, a museum and its exhibition space, but there will also be other services, a restaurant, a coffee, an art school will be transferred, an art school from Florence will be transferred to Sant'Orsola's quarter.
Do you know which one?
No, I can't tell you right
can't
now,
say.
but
stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. Maybe with an international school for sure.
Yeah.
And there will be the main in the floors. Okay, so they will have their laboratories, classrooms, and some space to also for the international student to stay if they stay for a brief period of time here in Sant'Orsola. Then you'll have also another literary coffee, some space for craftsmen. The idea to Sant'Orsola new life is to bring culture and art and ancient techniques or that are characteristic from San Lorenzo district where we are and from Florence back here in Sant'Orsola. There will also be, here we can actually see where there's this door, there will be an artist studio linked to the residency program of Museo Sant'Orsola. This program, we already launched it in 2022. So before the first exhibition, and the first artist who was invited is actually English artist, and she worked to a piece that we recently acquired that you will discover at the opening of the museum, and that enters directly in dialogue with the altarpiece, ancient altarpiece that will come back to Sant'Orsola on loan.
Morgane, we're going to see you in 2026, right? We're going to see you
maybe
film.
Before, because the idea is to open again in 2025 another exhibition, ephemeral idea of rediscovering also some spaces of this building that is going on a big change. So that is the main idea also of the exhibition during the construction site, is to rediscover a place in a state that will be transformed and in a changing moment, and that to be also part of this change and not to have, that's what the idea of Artea Group, not to say we're a French group that are taking on some Florentine patrimony and just doing something on the side and not opening to the Florentine and to the city. So that's, so yeah.
You have your work cut out for you, right? This is immense. It's immense to think about the work that you're doing, to think about the work that your group is doing, and in concession, and that will remain as a as patrimony for the city of Florence and for all of these people who will be involved in the complex, that we will see you then before 2000. Sorry, who worked there?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, who will work? I mean, there will be a lot of new people who will come and work in Sant'Orsola.
Certainly.
People from Florence or wishes.
So we're going to say goodbye. We're going to say goodbye and thank you so much for your time, your explanations. We are very privileged on behalf of Restoration Conversations and Calliope Arts. Very privileged and very happy to have been able to see these artists with you particularly and in these spaces. Enjoy them. They will never be the same.
Yes, thank you.